and a good day to our fellow listeners, and welcome to the Pancake Podcast. Today, we are discussing an interesting case on our podcast about another podcast that goes by the name Serial. Serial is essentially a podcast ran by an individual who goes by the name of Sarah Koenig, along with a team of writers. In the podcast, they investigate a crime that occurred in 1999 where Heyman Lee, a 19-year-old second-generation Korean-American student, was found dead by manual strangulation in Leakin Park, Baltimore, Maryland. Her Pakistani ex-boyfriend, Anand Saeed, was arrested for a murder. Sarah Koenig explores whether Anand is truly responsible for a murder. However, we are not here to talk about the murder of Heyman Lee or whether Anand is guilty or not. Today, we are here to explore the ethics of this particular podcast. Serial presents an interesting case of journalism integrity that may have perhaps gone too far and violated what is defined as ethical journalism. On our podcast today, we will discuss such ethical questions. I am Gary, and I have with me today Andy.
Hello there.
And Sky.
Hi.
Good to have you guys here. So, let me start off by asking, what are your individual views on this particular podcast?
Personally, I believe this podcast did not violate any ethics or journalistic integrity. In fact, I believe this kind of podcast helps the viewers explore and actively engage with the world around them, to report on things of injustice and importance.
I would like to disagree with your view. In my eyes, I see serial podcasts existing for the purpose of earning a profit, holding little integrity when putting up to any scrutiny, as it is not done by a professional investigator and does not hold the news up to an objective standard. Rather, it explores how much Sarah is obsessed with a case.
That is very interesting. I'm going to ask you both a couple questions, and we will decide at the end to see whether whose viewpoints shall prevail. That being said, please keep an open mind, as ethics is merely a concept and can differ from person to person. You, as our viewers, are free to make your own judgments. So, to start us off, what do you two think of the way Sarah introduces and ends her podcast?
The introduction of the serial podcasts are appalling. She starts with an advertisement immediately, which immediately calls into question the ethical concern of the fact that Koenig is profiting off a murder. Do not get me wrong, it is perfectly fine to have advertisements on your news podcast, but is Sarah Koenig exploiting this unfortunate event solely for monetary purposes?
Fascinating. What do you think about this, Sky?
I feel it's not reasonable to argue that Sarah Koenig is exploiting this event. She made herself look slightly worse with her inclusion of sponsors. But, other than that, there are no other single mentions of the sponsors. Besides, a show that does not have a income to sustain itself on cannot go on. These advertisements are simply here for Serial's survival. According to the SPJ Journalistic Conduct, sponsors and advertisements are allowed in news sources, so long as they do not hold any influence on the real news. Additionally, they have to be labeled correctly so people can tell whether it is advertisement or news.
Very interesting, Sky. Now, moving on to the next question. Do you all believe Sarah Koenig's podcast to be accurate? Andy?
Definitely not. Sarah Koenig's podcast is full of speculations that may indeed lead her viewers into falsehood. If you listen to the podcast and read between the lines, her connotative opinion on Anand Saeed implied she thinks that he is mostly innocent. That is not journalistic integrity. That is Sarah Koenig using her platform to influence the viewers and potentially leading them to believe that a potential criminal is innocent. A large amount of evidence is either old, unreliable, or just murky due to the effects of time. All of this is just pure speculation.
That's a reasonable claim, Andy, but you ignore the fact that Sarah Koenig draws a clear line between speculation and real fact. She never gave her actual opinion, besides stating the fact that she feels Anand is innocent, and she does not trust the claims the state has made. She predates her speculations, usually with a clear warning that she is guessing. Your claims of the unreliability of the data are also made unreasonably. To be frank, there is no other way to get to the bottom of this other than interviewing people who were there. Besides, she makes many good educated guesses on the matter.
Are you saying that her claim that the state's opinion on this matter is false? Are you saying that her giving of opinion is justifiable? Or the fact that the people she interviews are all against Anon's imprisonment? And so far we hadn't seen much interviews of people for the arrest of Anon. If this does not create a bias within the reader, nothing will.
What's wrong with influencing the viewers? She's not a news channel, nor is she trying to pass herself off as one. She is a podcast, and the people have been using this media with their point of view for a long time. Giving off facts that would obviously make your position weaker is obviously undesirable. It is literally what we're doing right now.
Well, that's all the time we have for now, folks. I'm going to give Sky the win today. Let me explain why. Although Sarah has sponsors, I believe it is necessary to have a source of income to sustain the podcast. Furthermore, she is an ethical radio host because she assesses the context and the information she gathers with care and never overextends her own opinion and analysis and jumping to conclusions. In the end, Sarah is only wanting to get to the bottom of the truth and perhaps score justice for Anon. Even if Anon is guilty in the end, she is doing the world a favor by clearing up inconsistencies and shedding truth on what really happened. Well, that's all the time we have. It's good to have you both.
You people are blind to the truth. Don't you see this?
Thank you for having me on your podcast today.
That's all, folks. Thank you for tuning in to today's podcast, and we'll see you next time.